You're putting yourself out there, and you're telling an admissions committee why should they accept you, and this is part of that.
Ask the Dean, episode 52. Woo! Did you know we are in front of a live studio audience this week?
Vaxxed and masked.
What'd you say?
I said vaxxed and masked.
Oh, vaxxed and masked. Yes, vaxxed and masked. 52 episodes of Ask the Dean. Phenomenal.
Crazy. Yep.
Rachel Grubbs, co-founder of Mapped, MCAT expert extraordinaire, Premed expert extraordinaire. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm great. This is such a big week. There's so much going on.
Like what?
Well, after Ask the Dean, your book is getting released this week, in contention to be a bestseller. Friends, if you like Ryan Gray, buy his book. It's a good book. Wouldn't it be cool if you personally knew a best-selling author? Wednesday, Inside Med Admissions. Thursday, AMCAS opens for submission, and the West Coast Health Student Fair is happening. Friday, the really big one, National Premed Day. It's a big week.
It is a busy, big week. I'm excited. So many awesome things, almost all of them for free. Trying to spread the knowledge, spread the wealth of Dr. Scott Wright. That's what we're trying to spread the knowledge. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We finally got a little sunshine here in Austin. It's been raining for 3 years straight. So
at least it's not the frozen tundra anymore.
Well, that's true. Snowmageddon has gone away. So
Yes. I was watching the NASCAR race yesterday, which was in Austin for the first time ever.
Yes.
And they were racing in the rain, which is not a typical NASCAR thing, but it was fun to see.
But it rained all day yesterday, and then it rained all night last night. So we're feeling a little bit waterlogged.
Yes.
But it'll be okay.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's answer some questions, yeah?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So the first question here, many secondary applications ask about moments of failure and personal hardships I've had to overcome. I had a failed application attempt back in 2017 with a very bad MCAT, and I have had issues with mental health. What are your feelings on discussing these? I know mental health can still be stigmatized even in the world of medicine. Thank you for always giving such great advice. So, Scott, my personal advice when I talk to students, questions on an application, secondary essay, or in an interview, when it's like, hey, tell me about a time you failed. I tell students, as best as you can, stay away from academics, stay away from the MCAT, stay away from applications. Because failing in the academic world isn't like, it's a failure. We feel bad, but it's really not the type of failure and lessons learned that people are looking for.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, what they're really wanting to see is, have you faced hardship and difficulty or failure in your life in general terms? And I think I like the idea of talking about something, maybe it's a family situation, or maybe it's, I had a student recently who had a very good friend commit suicide. And so he talked about that in the context of his application and secondaries and stuff. And so, not that everybody's going to have something as enormous as your best friend doing that, or dying somehow. But that's the kind of difficulties that I think are very instructive. And when you reflect on those, there's a huge amount of meaning that can really be brought forward to your reader. And so now I'm interested, Ryan, in your take on the second part of the question in terms of mental health issues. I do agree that this can be a touchy kind of situation.
Yep.
And I think that my feeling is that, you have to be very careful on speaking about mental health, because it can mental health issues are disabilities, particularly if the student is still dealing with them, or if they're managing them correctly, but they are considered disabilities, and so you don't want to open up sort of a can of worms talking about a disability when you don't need to.
Yep.
So what is your thought about talking about mental health issues?
I typically tell students, just in general, broad terms, you never want to give the admissions committee a reason to reject you.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want to be too open of a book, and you need to be truthful and honest and feel comfortable with telling your story. And if it's a big part of your story, it's a big reason why you're pursuing medicine, go for it. As long as you understand that there are some potential consequences, and maybe knowing that, and I hate to say this because these are people's lives and their stories and their struggles and what they're doing, but maybe tone it down a little bit, right? Just to potentially not give concern to this person reviewing your application going, well, if you struggled previously, medical school is going to be a whole nother level. And am I going to have concerns, number one, about your personal safety, personal health, getting through this? And number two, am I going to be concerned about you as a student getting through? And so I typically try to have students try to avoid those types of concerns while also acknowledging that you have to tell your story and be comfortable with that. And some students just need to say, I have to be honest with who I am and what I've struggled with. And that's my story.
Yeah. I had a student recently who had struggled with their sexuality and brought that up in the essay, but it was almost like an aside and didn't address it, didn't go any further into it. And I was like, whoa. You drop this bomb and then you don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
And so, I communicated that to the students, and I think, it was a difficult thing for him to kind of deal with. But generally speaking, I think don't drop a bomb and then do nothing with it. If you're gonna, not that that's necessarily a bomb, but that's a big issue. It was clearly a big issue to the student, his coming out experience and stuff like that. But if you're not going to go into it fully or in a pretty decent way, then don't go there at all.
Yeah. Was it I won't even follow up question that because there's a whole rabbit hole. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, without getting into too many details in any one particular, whether it's the disability or the question of how you identify, where I often land is, have you turned your pain into power?
Yes.
I mean, everyone's mileage may vary, right? I will speak personally, the traumas that I've experienced in the past, I needed a lot of years to get that kind of perspective. Right. So if it's fresh, am I talking about it with friends and family and my therapist? Heck yeah, I am. Am I documenting in an essay? Well, no, probably not. Because to me, an essay is like, this has reached some sort of resolution. And if I'm not sure I'm there, then I'm just probably not going to touch on it. But this is not to shame in any way. Like Ryan said, you tell your story however you feel like you need to tell it. We're just saying, proceed with caution. Make sure that you're still keeping the focus, especially if you're talking about in your personal statement on why medicine.
Right. And I think that, if you're dealing with this in the context of a question on a secondary application where you can spend the entire response talking about the issue, then that's one thing. It's a whole nother thing when you just drop it as one sentence in an essay in the personal statement, and then you just leave it without any kind of resolution or any kind of reflection at all. So I think, again, to reiterate what we're all saying is just be aware, be careful, and very reflective, and be cognizant of who's reading and what their responsibility is. And like Ryan said, don't give them a reason to raise a red flag.
Yep. Second one here. suppose we submit our primary app before 6/1 to get verified. Then we take the MCAT at the end of June. Wouldn't we be behind on secondaries for all other schools we will later add after receiving our MCAT score at the end of July? The answer for most schools is no, because most schools don't screen for secondaries.
Right.
They'll go, oh, Johnny's applying to us. Here's your secondary.
Yeah. And some schools, they don't even send it to you. They expect you to go to their website, log in, do everything to connect it with the AMCAS application and do it. And so, yeah, I agree with that completely. I don't think this is a problem.
Yeah. I typically tell students, if you're going to do this, which is perfectly fine, between when you take the MCAT and when you get that score back, write the secondary essays as if you have applied to those schools, so that when you do add those schools and you get those secondaries, you can turn them around within a day.
Real quick. Yep.
It's all a game.
Yep, I agree.
All right, now we're ready for some questions that are typed in.
Over the course of my medical clinical experiences, I always felt that I wanted more autonomy, like a physician would have. Would explaining this in my personal statement be viewed as negative towards other health professions?
I mean, I don't think so. I see this a lot in personal statements, is where they're talking about they want to be, they want to have autonomy. They want to have the responsibility of the patient in their hands, and they want to be the leader of the healthcare team. Mm-hmm. I don't think that necessarily addresses, suggests that other healthcare workers or providers are, not as good or whatever. They have their role, just like the physician has their role. So I don't see it as problematic, and I've never felt like it was disparaging to other healthcare providers.
So I'll take a different angle on this. I think there's a difference between autonomy and wanting to do more, right? I think I would argue that physicians a lot of times don't have autonomy to do a lot of what they want to do. They're beholden to insurance companies, and they're beholden to whatever their practice regulation, whatever.
Right.
And obviously, yes, as a physician, you typically are considered to have more autonomy than other advanced practice providers like PAs and NPs, although that's changing in a lot of areas, fortunately and unfortunately. There's a lot of push for PAs and NPs to be independent, autonomous practitioners, and I personally don't agree with that, and they don't have the training to do what doctors do. They have a specific role in healthcare, and they're very important. But that's a side tangent. I think autonomy in this language, I think, is a naive word. I think having the expertise to practice to like a fullest extent is maybe the language they're thinking of, and they're using autonomy in place of that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I see autonomy not as frequently used as responsibility.
Yeah.
I want to have more responsibility is the way I see it phrased typically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah. That's an important distinction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And autonomy potentially can come across like, I want to be the boss. Nobody can tell me what to do.
Right.
I'm not good with working in a team because I don't want to listen to anyone else. Right. I think that word conjures up too many negatives for me, that I would avoid that specific word and focus on, well, what does that mean to you, and focus on the meaning behind that. Mm-hmm. And maybe it is those things, in which case,
red flag.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, because in the business world, often autonomy is used in a like, your manager doesn't have to manage you much, so we like you way, right? But yes, set aside the corporate BS where they're just trying to squeeze every ounce of your life out of you. And in the rest of the world, autonomy literally just means self-governing, right? And right, to your point, Ryan, no one really in the working world is self-governing because we're all on a team. Everyone is beholden to someone else.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm having a difficult time making a school list. My stats pretty much fall in at least the 10th percentiles at all schools. I don't care about location, and looking at the mission statements and curriculums, every school seems amazing. Aside from schools that do not accept out-of-state applicants, how can I narrow down my list to only 25?
Good problem to have.
Yeah. So
Yeah, right.
Premedyears.com/437 is how to build the ultimate med school list that I did with our good friend Joanne Snap. We talked all about all the different parts of how to look at building a school list, which did not include using U.S. News and World Reports.
Yay.
Yeah, there's just a lot of moving pieces. I would say that probably their biggest reason for why they're struggling is because they're saying they don't care about location.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're kidding themselves, and they really need to think about it. Like, if you're from Southern California, do you really want to go to medical school in Buffalo?
Yeah.
Where it's going to be 10 feet of snow 6 months out of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, snow. What do you call that? The lake effect snow.
Yeah.
And, the other thing that strikes me about the location thing is some schools, most schools are in larger cities, but there are some schools that are in smaller communities or suburban areas. And so I wonder if the questioner is from a, large city like LA, let's say, for example, do they really want to go to rural Tennessee to go to medical school?
We know this fellow, and he told us, or they, the person, I can't remember, but I think they've lived a lot of places. So that might be part of it.
Could be.
It's got the spirit of an itinerant.
Yeah, I understand that.
All right. I put the banner up so you guys can see episode 437, Premed Years.
Excellent.
All right.
I am starting as a medical scribe soon and am very excited. Any tips for how to get the most out of my experience? How to communicate with providers, what questions ask, etc. Oh, good question. So, number one, learn medical terminology as soon as you can. That's obviously a huge part of being a medical scribe, is being able to convert or not convert, but just listen to everything the doctor's saying and understand what they're saying. Most scribe positions will have onboarding and training and all of that fun stuff. So you're going to just be like a sponge and absorb it all. That's really the number one thing. It's just be a good student. Be someone who is teachable, and don't go in thinking you understand it all.
Right. Yeah, and I think too, we've talked about this on this broadcast before, Ryan, that there are some scribe jobs, there are some providers, physicians and other providers, who are going to take you and show you things and allow you more sort of interaction with what's going on in the room. Others are going to be just like, take notes over there in the corner, and that's all you do. Yeah. And so, but I think relative to what they should do to make it a great experience is particularly when you start connecting with some providers, ask questions and, say, hey, can I, I'm going to do my job, but I'm also really interested in what you're doing, or whatever. And just let them know that, that you're interested and ask questions and really, put yourself out there a little bit. You may get, no, that's not your job, but I think you have to be willing to put yourself out there.
Yeah, so some physicians won't like that. Some physicians will love it. And just because the first physician you ever scribed for shot you down and wanted you to be silent doesn't mean you shouldn't try it with the next one.
Right. That's exactly right.
All right.
Dr. Wright, did you or anyone on your adcom ever feel conflicted in wanting to admit someone because of something on their application? Low GPA and or MCAT, for example. Was anyone in the situation accepted and either proved the adcom right or wrong in their initial concerns?
Yeah, I mean, most admissions committees, certainly in my experience, there's a lot of conversation that goes on now about a particular applicant. Now, honestly, when you get right down to it, when these schools are interviewing, they're getting thousands of applications. They're interviewing, let's say, maybe 1,000 applicants, perhaps even more over the course of the entire process. You can't spend a whole lot of time discussing in the admissions committee each applicant. I mean, we're not talking every applicant gets 20, 30, 40 minutes. That just doesn't happen. Logistically, you can't manage a process that way with busy admissions committee members and stuff like that, who are faculty members and have their own life and work going on. But what I would say is, yes, that sometimes there are committee members who will express concern about one particular aspect of a application. It gets discussed quite a bit. I would say, in my experience, we always tried to reach consensus on applicants. We were never comfortable if there was one committee member or even a subset of committee members who were very concerned. I would say in most cases when there was that level of concern that was expressed, we would either table that applicant, come back to it on another day when we could, for example, assign that applicant to another committee member to review to get a different perspective on it. But we worked with consensus, generally speaking, and so I do not think when there was a great deal of concern from a subset of committee members that student would have been admitted. Generally speaking, we would not have done that.
When writing my personal statement, is it essential to have a, quote, flow or transitional point from one experience to another? Scott, what do you think about that?
Is it essential to have? Well, I think flow is important in an essay for readability. I think when you have hard transitions from one thing to another. Now, having said that, flow can be as simple as one word. One transition word can provide flow. It doesn't have to be a whole sentence. It doesn't have to be, a long thing, especially if you're running up against character limits and stuff like that. Then I think the word also, or the word however, or the word or a phrase even though, or there's a lot of different ways to do transitions where you don't have to spend a whole sentence, a lot of characters to do it. I think you can easily do it with just a little bit of stuff.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake is too much transition.
Right.
Why are you telling me all this information?
Yes.
This isn't your biography here.
It's not your point. Yeah.
And then no transition at all. And
right.
I sit back. I'm like, where am I? When am I?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I find sometimes you can get transition just by sequencing the sentences in your paragraph in such a way that the last sentence of one paragraph leads pretty naturally
into the
first.
Next. Yeah.
I mean, it just depends on what you're communicating and how you're communicating it.
Yeah. I got one essay recently. It was 5,200 and some odd characters, no paragraphs. It was all one big long paragraph. And I was like, whoa, this is not going to work.
That's a lot.
I mean, that's absolutely how I think.
Yeah.
But when I write, I try to find some breaks.
I can't do this. So we gotta go back. Give me some paragraphs to help my brain get around this.
Yeah, I guess, Ryan, you and I were talking about that a little bit offline. I think sometimes applicants forget, like adcoms want to do right by you, but also they're tired and they have a lot of people
That's right.
Like you want to make yourself real readable for them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other big mistake kind of along those same lines is students that whip out the thesaurus when writing
hate
the
that.
personal
Yes.
statement.
Yes.
You don't need to prove that you're smart and you know how to use a thesaurus and you have a big vocabulary.
Yeah.
New York Times writes to an 8th grade level.
Yeah.
And the easier it is to read, the faster they're going to be able to get through it and understand it and read it and connect with you.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing too is if you get, sometimes I get these run-on sentences that are so long and complex that I read it 3 times before I get the gist of what they're trying to say. And admissions committees, they're not going to do that. They're going to just skip over that. They're not even going to think about that. They're not going to read over it, 2 or 3 times.
Right.
So just break those sentences up. If they're more than 2 lines long, that's too long.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking.
Yeah, some conditional clause in there should have been its own sentence.
Yeah, exactly.
What the heck is a conditional clause?
You know how I talk when I'm talking about a thing and then I pause and I talk about another thing and then I keep going and I come back and somewhere in there was a conditional clause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would it be frowned upon to leave a non-clinical career for an MA position? I assume the specialty of the clinic doesn't matter either. We get this question every couple of weeks, but why would it be frowned upon?
Yeah, I don't get that. Yeah. It would not be frowned upon. I think it'd be a great, MAs. That's great experience there. If you're a MA in a nice clinic and you get the opportunity to really connect with the providers there, I mean, you can get some awesome experiences.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to skip this next one because it's super long, but I wrote that person to let them know if they can crunch it down, we'll take it back. We'll go back to them.
I know that you all don't believe that we should place any emphasis on school prestige, but for a non-traditional student pursuing their first degree, should we go to the best school possible? For example, I'm a California resident. Should I aim for UC instead of the Cal State system? So basically the question is, I know you don't believe in prestige, but should I worry about prestige?
Yeah, and the answer is no.
The answer is no.
It is really funny how there is such... they're both state systems, but there's such a weird competition between the university state system and the Cal State system.
Cal State is definitely the redheaded stepchild of the state schools in California. And I don't know why that started or how it started or what, but it'd be interesting to see the history behind that.
Yeah. So anyway, question asker, no, we don't care. If you want a prestige lover, you got to ask someone else.
Is being a caregiver for elderly individuals viewed as equal clinical experience to being a scribe or EMT, for example? 100% of my job is patient interaction.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yep.
I mean, I think, you're learning different things than you would learn as a scribe or an EMT, but, and you're having different experiences, but I don't think, the admissions committee certainly not going to view it as one being necessarily better than the other or whatever. I think they're really looking for that patient interaction, and
more importantly, the takeaway from
the reflection, the meaning.
Yeah, I mean, we get questions that look like this a lot, and I think sometimes there's someone out there spreading this weird misconception that if it's not in a clinic, it's not clinical. Like, you're in a senior's home? That's not clinical. Yeah, if 100% of your job is patient interaction.
Yeah, it's clinical.
That's great.
Does it really matter what your 3 most meaningful experiences are? I'm trying to decide whether to put being a TA or being a coach for my last one. I have good stories for both.
I think you choose what. I think students try to overthink this a lot, and they're looking at, well, maybe I need to have one clinical and one non-clinical and one this and they try to manipulate it so that it sounds best and they're going to get the best reaction from the admissions committee or whatever. To me, you just choose where the meaning was, and if something was most meaningful. So in this, trying to decide whether to put a TA or a coach, I go with your heart. What is your heart telling you? What your intuition say is the right way to go for it for you, and then do that, and don't overthink it.
Telling a pre-med not to overthink is I'm not even gonna make a comparison. You understand what I'm saying.
I know.
That's how we're wired, Scott. It's just the way it is.
I get it. I totally get it. I've been around the block enough times to know that. But I do think that even though that's true, it's still worth saying, try not to overthink this issue.
It is.
They need to hear that. Okay, I tend to do that. And so.
And then they go to Student Doctor Network and I'm working again.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I take 3 credits of music classes as part of a scholarship I'm on. When calculating my hours for music, do I include hours and write about any experiences within those 3 classes or only outside of those classes? I've had some very meaningful experiences with my string quartet.
Okay, I'm not clear on what we're saying here.
I think they're saying that something that they consider a meaningful experience is technically academic work. So it's like, can they count as an activity?
I would. Yeah, I would.
So do I include hours within those 3 classes or only outside of those classes?
I would just do the outside of class stuff, because class is not extracurricular.
Mm-hmm.
But seemingly you're getting. I mean, this is a fine line here, because if you're in a string quartet and part of that, what that string quartet does is you're getting graded on, like giving a concert or something like that, then there's a little bit of gray area there. But I definitely, and I do think that admissions committees are not going to, oh, she put an academic thing on here,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's one red flag, and so that's not.
Liar. You're a liar.
That's not how they work. To me, I would love to know about your experiences with the string quartet, and I'd want to know what instrument you play, and how you work together, and how you really connect and feel the music. I'd be all over that as an interviewer. I'd want to know all about that.
Yeah. Concur. When applying, do I need to include a transcript for an EMT course that was not at a community college and has no credits or grades? I don't even think a transcript exists.
Nope.
RTFM. It's my favorite line. Read the manuals.
Yeah.
The manuals will have all of the information you need on there, and those kind of allied health type trainings.
Mm-hmm.
If you did get grades and you do have a transcript, they go on there.
Yep.
If you don't,
even if it's a for-profit school, or which is not unusual in health professions for for-profit institutions, but those are indeed institutions, and you get a transcript and you put them on there.
Yep.
In this case, it doesn't sound like you would.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, vocational training doesn't always equate to transcript.
Right.
Okay.
Kind of a specific question, but having to retake the MCAT in July, still applying this cycle, should I apply to all my schools or just submit one application on Thursday and wait until I get my score in August for the others? Really want to get into one of my state schools. So yeah, this is what we were talking about earlier. This is just the apply to one school game, which I was against when I first heard of this. I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I understand why people do it.
Yeah.
It works. It doesn't delay anything. It's less stressful, less financial impact.
Right.
Assuming you don't get the score you want, you decide to not finish with the applications. So yeah, that's what students do. Again, with the idea that you write your secondaries as if you are applying to all of the schools.
Yeah, agreed. So that you're ready.
Yeah.
I talk about that in my new book, the Premed Playbook Guide to the Medical School Application Process.
Where can people buy that book?
Oh, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Powell's Books, your local bookstore, anywhere where books are sold.
Cool.
It might have USA Today bestseller on it, maybe at some point.
Half
If a
price
lot of
used
you go out
books.
and buy it today and tomorrow.
No, I think it's good for the week. It's
It's the
weekly.
week. It's all pre-orders and first sales of the week. Yeah.
Can I get it in the half price bin at my local bookstore? I'm kidding. That's a joke. I'm sure it'll be bestseller.
Don't pick
That
on
was
Ryan about his book. He's feeling sensitive.
Hi guys, I got a letter of recommendation from a dean of a medical school. Hopefully not one like Scott, because it probably won't carry much weight. For
No compassion there.
Contribution to some research on COVID-19 this year. I wanted to add this to my application, but I'm not entirely sure how to go about it. Do you have any suggestions? Just add it to your list.
Yeah. I would just add it to, unless they're getting a committee letter or something, and their school won't allow that in the packet. But seemingly you could
still do separate and have
do a
letter,
separate
one individual letter.
Mm-hmm.
Let the medical schools do what they want with it.
Out. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems too cool to pass by.
No, I agree.
Okay, wait.
I would say, instead of wasting your time writing a letter of recommendation, you could just accept me to your school.
Yeah, right.
Working at a mental health detox facility, I'm doing administrative, updating EHR and clinical work, initial screening, helping patients shower when too intoxicated, taking vitals every 2 hours, administrating blood alcohol, concentrations, urine drug tests, etc. The position is oftentimes held by MA, CNAs, EMTs, but I don't have those certs. It's not required. Is this still considered clinical? Heck yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That sounds like hard work and meaningful work.
It sounds like, wow.
Thanks for doing it.
Bless your heart.
Most people need
that's
you.
amazing. Yeah.
To not be judged, for you to make them feel like humans again.
Yeah. I'll extend out the question too, because a lot of students in this situation will go, well, part of my job is admin work and part of my job is clinical. Do I have to separate the hours? Like, no, if the bulk of your job is clinical experience, don't worry about the admin side, because guess what? Doctors do admin work for the bulk of their time too. So it's fine.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This is not a question, but it's a charming comment.
Exactly.
All right.
That is so true.
Our listening only people are going to be like, what?
The comment was premeds should get a PhD in overthinking. Yes,
Right.
it should be an honorary degree bequeathed on all people who get into medical
when
school.
you get your first worry wrinkle on your forehead at 20, we just automatically give you the honorary PhD.
I still need to get my Botox.
My God.
Many secondary applications ask about moments of failure and personal hardships I've had to overcome.
Did we do this
we read
already?
this one already. Yep.
I think you reposted, friend. We already got you. If you missed it, it was back at the beginning.
What MCAT score is worthy of a retake? I like that language. You are worthy of a retake. A 505 is a 505 competitive with a 3.8 GPA. Oh, the lovely balancing equation.
Yeah. Well, I would say it depends a little bit on what they were doing on practice exams. How they were scoring on practice exams, and if that 505 was seemingly a lot lower than their practice exams were showing, then I think that might be warranted. In terms of 505 is not a great score. So, I mean, it's not awful, but it's not going to be necessarily competitive at a lot of schools, depending on the mix of everything else in the application. Not everything is about MCAT and GPA, but so I'd probably, my advice would be to examine why you think you made a 505. Did you expect higher? Why did you expect higher? I mean, Rachel, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, you're getting right at it. I mean, I guess the question the student is asking is, are these numbers okay? And we're going to decline to answer that, right? Because we know that that's not the way the adcoms are going to look at you. They're not going to just look at the numbers. So we won't answer that question. But if you want to know specifically about whether or not you need to retake a 505, then the question goes back to, how many practice tests did you take? What were your scores on practice tests? Were you taking your practice tests in realistic ways, right? So if you were always getting 513 plus, but you were also taking the exams untimed in your PJs, well, then those were false numbers from the first place, you know? But if you were doing time conditions, sitting up straight, fully clothed, you know, like if you were doing exams like the real thing and getting better scores, then something might have been off on test day. And only you were going to know.
Yep.
Oh, another MCAT one.
How much do you usually see MCAT scores vary from practice exams? Is it common to see a 5-point increase or decrease?
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say so.
There's no rubric because a lot of it depends on what's happening between the exams. I think some students, and I'm not accusing you of this question asker, I'm just talking generally. Some students think that taking an exam is almost like taking a temperature. Like, what's that number? Okay. Like, no, you got to do something with the data, you know? I mean, same with the temperature, right? You don't just expect the fever to go down magically. If you are taking exams earlier in your prep before you've mastered all your content, you could be getting wild fluctuations in the score because different exams cover different segments of the possible topics, right? There's like, I don't remember the exact numbers anymore, but maybe 500 plus possible topics that are in the MCAT, but you're only going to get 60 or 70 of them. So if the luck of the draw of the practice exam you took, or the real exam even that you took that day, happened to be topics that you are awesome at or less awesome at, that could impact the score. If you've done all your content review and you're still seeing those kinds of fluctuations, then I'm going to start to worry about either how well you retained the review. Like, did you really figure out how to move it from long-term to working memory? And like, you've got that good recall going on. And then I'm also going to start wondering about your ability to problem solve and read, which again are fixable things, but yeah, it's common to see that kind of fluctuation because there's so many different things that go into a score.
Yeah.
And I think, good.
When you first started saying it really depends on what happens between, I was thinking in my head, between your ears, right? What happens in your head, the anxiety around the real tests,
absolutely,
stuff just takes over.
Yep.
Yeah, I get into the mental health stuff almost every time. So I was like, I'll let it go this time, but also all of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, even what you ate, right? You know, was your breakfast cornflakes or did you have some protein?
Yeah.
Yep.
Routine,
not that cornflakes are horrible.
routine.
I'm just saying, put something with it.
Or intermittent fasting and don't eat breakfast if that's your style.
Yeah, well, whatever works for
Stick
you
with
and your
what
body.
You do.
Do what you need to do to have your best mental day. By now, you probably know what that is.
Yep. I just pre-ordered your new book. Oh, you mean this one? The Premed Playbook Guide to the Medical School Application Process. In time to receive the PDF copies of your previous books as well. Great deal. Do you recommend reading the others too, or is your new one supposed to cover that material as an all-in-one book? Yes and no. The new book is an all-in-one, and the other books go further into a little bit more depth and lots more examples. Cool. So,
yep.
I'm starting research this month and will be doing it until I hopefully go to medical school next year. I know what research I will be doing and what it entails, but will not be getting into the bulk of it until this summer. Can I still put it on my application?
I think so.
Yeah, the general rule of thumb that we talk about here is don't put it on your application if you haven't done it yet. If you're submitting your application May 27th and you're starting your research June 10th, like it doesn't go on your application. Right. Except for TMDSAS, which
where you can do the
activity.
future stuff, right? Which is awesome.
Yep. But it sounds like this student is doing it, just not like
fully
core nitty-gritty stuff yet.
Right.
Is the intention to apply for HPSP something that should be mentioned in the med school app process or something to be avoided? I'm curious as to whether the HPSP mention may discourage schools from offering merit scholarships if I was to be offered any. I don't see any reason why you should mention HPSP in a medical school application. It's just there's nowhere. It's like, are you planning on joining the military? Like that question's not asked. Why would you put it in there?
Yeah, it'd be awkward to bring it up just routinely or something.
Yep.
I agree.
How should I categorize courses taken from a postbac medical lab science program on MCAT? They weren't undergrad courses, but I also didn't get a graduate degree from it. That's a good question. It sounds like it depends. Were they graduate courses or were they undergraduate courses?
Yeah, they'd have to be one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to get a graduate degree to take graduate classes.
Right. It sounds like they're undergrad classes to me. If I had to guess, I would say they're undergrad classes, but you need to investigate that with your institution.
Yeah, I mean, there is a postbac class standing. So if you're talking about class standing categorize, it's your postbac. Right. But yeah, if you're just talking about was this undergrad or grad, they say this wasn't undergrad courses. So I think it was graduate course postbac class standing.
Well, it would just be graduate.
Yeah, I wonder about that. Because it's
okay, so go read the AMCAS handbook because yours is a weird case and we don't know off the top of our heads.
Yeah. They specifically said they're not undergrad courses, so they're graduate. Mm-hmm. AMCAS, the postbac on AMCAS is specifically undergraduate courses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Same with TMDSAS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Even though we kind of technically say, if you take graduate coursework, that's basically a postbac, but technically for the application services, they're not postbac work if they're graduate level.
Right.
All right. Just got a notification during this live stream that my guide to the medical school application process book is arriving tomorrow. Yay!
That's awesome.
Currently do lab and clinical research for 2 dermatologists. Would listing one doctor for each activity be best, or is there a good way to list both? There's only one spot on there for each activity. So
yeah.
There's no need to list both.
No, just
you can list the same one for both. Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Because in the description, you could easily put there's 2 dermatologists and whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to reply to a student, friends. Sometimes I just can't quite handle the multitasking fast enough.
All right.
Let's see.
If you have an upward trend but got a pass in the semester in one class, does that destroy or hinder your upward trend for medical school? Those are very strong words. Does it destroy? It's like the Death Star blowing up. There goes the upward trend.
It's funny because we've gotten a couple of these too, where they're like, I had an upward trend and then I got a C. And I'm like, but did you have a 2.0 before and now you have a 3.8?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's still an upward trend.
Yeah, I don't think a P is going to destroy an upward trend or hinder.
Nope. Yeah. Technically, it doesn't affect it at all.
Nope. That's exactly right.
Is there a good way to list honors, awards, recognitions without coming across as bragging? It makes me a little uncomfortable. They are all mostly associated with a specific experience.
Well, you need to get over that. You need to get over the lack of comfort you have, because the entire application is selling yourself. I know, Ryan, I don't think you like that
I
terminology.
don't like that language. Yeah,
I know, but this is you're putting yourself out there, and you're telling an admissions committee why should they accept you, and this is part of that. And so you need to. It's not going to come across as bragging. It's going to come across as, this is what I received. This is what I did, and because I did that, I got this award.
Yep. From a language standpoint, it's not bragging if you're just listing facts, right? If you're using flowery adjectives, then maybe you're bragging, right? So if it's, I worked so hard and it was the best ever, then like I'm less interested in what you have to say.
Right.
But if you, entered a contest and placed third out of 400, that's amazing. Like the numbers tell me, you know.
That's right.
I'm starting hospice volunteering soon was wondering if companionship or doing activities with patients such as painting counts as clinical experience. So hospice is this weird kind of situation, right? Because hospice on its own doesn't really tell us what you did. Hospice is obviously a categorization of a patient who's typically considered to have less than 6 months to live.
Right.
And there are organizations that send volunteers to that person's house or into the hospital or wherever that may be. And a lot of times it is just companionship, just being there with people in their last remaining days. And I have historically said hospice is clinical experience, and don't really question, well, what exactly were you doing from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock? And nope, that's not clinical experience. Right. I don't know. But it's different than going to the nursing home and doing bingo night.
Right.
I think.
Yes. I agree with that.
Yeah, well, there's a real different feeling to it, isn't there?
I just got my first shadowing gig with a neurosurgeon that starts this week, and I'm super excited to learn more. All right, no question.
Awesome.
The feedback has been incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. Well, 6:52 and the popcorn stopped popping.
Well, I'm excited for Ryan for your book. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you. I'm excited. Fingers crossed. We'll find out in a week or so if I hit the list. Not something I was expecting, but it's fun little phone call from the publisher.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
We shall see.
So big week this week, guys. We hope to see you at Inside Med Admissions on Wednesday. Hope to see you at National Premed Day Friday. If you're watching this on the replay, all that stuff will be available on YouTube also.
Yep.
Yes, it will. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you next week for a almost public. It won't be a public one next week. In 2 weeks, it'll be public.
Yeah.
Ask the Dean.
Yep. Happy evening.